Some nights start out like any other, quiet, predictable, nothing unusual. But in an instant, everything can change. One sound, one unexpected moment, and suddenly, the person you thought you knew best becomes a stranger. That night, I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. My mother had left town for the weekend, and it was just me and my stepfather in the house. We had spent nights alone before, and I had never felt uneasy. But this time was different. I could feel it before I even knew what was wrong. A shift in the air, a strange stillness that made my skin prickle. At first, I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just my imagination. But then, I heard it. A sound. Soft, faint, but deliberate. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. It was late, too late for him to still be awake. My stepfather was a man of routine. He always went to bed at the same time, always followed the same habits. But now something was off. I sat up in bed, straining to listen. The sound came again, a shuffle, the distinct creak of a floorboard. Someone was moving. My heart pounded. I told myself to ignore it, to go back to sleep. But my body had other plans. Before I knew what I was doing, I had slipped out from under the blankets, my bare feet hitting the cool wooden floor. I moved toward the door, carefully, silently. The hallway was dark, except for the faint glow of the night light at the end of the corridor. I hesitated before stepping out, my pulse hammering in my ears. Everything was too quiet. Then, a light, coming from downstairs. My stomach tightened. The living room lamp was on, its dim glow spilling into the hallway. That wasn't right. My stepfather always turned off the lights before bed. He was meticulous about it. But now, the light was on, casting long, distorted shadows against the walls. Something was wrong. I moved cautiously, each step slow, controlled. My breath felt too loud, my own heartbeat deafening. As I reached the top of the stairs, I peered down. And there he was, my stepfather, sitting on the couch, his back to me, completely unaware that I was watching him. At first, it seemed normal. But then I noticed his posture, hunched forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands gripping something. A piece of paper? A photograph? I couldn't tell. But whatever it was, he was holding it too tightly, like it meant something. I should have turned around. I should have gone back upstairs. But I couldn't. I took another step forward. And then I saw his face. The expression sent a chill through me. His features were tight, tense, like he was at war with himself. His jaw clenched, his brows furrowed. Then, without warning, he spoke. "I know you're there." I sucked in a sharp breath. My blood ran cold. His voice was calm, too calm. He didn't look at me, didn't turn. He just sat there, staring at whatever he was holding. I should have said something. I should have made an excuse, pretended I had just come downstairs for a glass of water. But my throat was dry. My lips wouldn't move. Then, slowly, he turned his head. And when his eyes met mine, I felt a wave of unease so strong it nearly knocked the air from my lungs. There was something in his gaze I had never seen before. Something that made my stomach twist. Something I didn't understand. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. He just watched me, as if he were measuring something, waiting for my reaction. And then I saw it. The object in his hand. A letter. Folded, creased, like it had been read too many times. But it wasn't just any letter. It was addressed to him. And the handwriting. It wasn't my mother's. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening at my sides. "What is that?" His eyes flickered, just for a second. "Go back to bed." The command was soft, but firm. I shook my head. "What's going on?" His fingers curled around the letter, knuckles whitening. "Now is not the time." That answer wasn't good enough. My chest tightened. "Who wrote that?" He exhaled through his nose, jaw locking. "You shouldn't have come downstairs." A slow, sinking feeling crawled up my spine. "Is it from?" "Go back to bed." His voice was sharper now. A warning. I should have listened. I should have turned around and done exactly as he said. But I didn't. Because I already knew. Whatever was in that letter, whatever secret he was trying to keep, it was about to change everything. And there was no going back. The silence between us stretched unbearably long, thick and suffocating. My stepfather sat there, gripping the letter as if it had the power to unravel everything he had built. I should have listened. I should have gone back upstairs, buried myself under my blankets, and pretended I never saw anything. But something deep inside me refused to move. I needed to know. I took another step forward, my breath shallow. Who wrote that? His jaw clenched, his fingers tightening around the paper. It doesn't matter. It does, I insisted, my voice barely above a whisper. You wouldn't be sitting here like this if it didn't. His shoulders tensed, but he didn't speak. The way he looked at me, it wasn't anger. It wasn't even frustration. It was something deeper, something heavier, like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, debating whether to jump. Then, finally, it's from someone I never thought I'd hear from again. The words sent a shiver down my spine. I swallowed hard. Who? He hesitated. Then, so softly I almost didn't hear it. Your father. Everything inside me froze. I stared at him, my mind racing, trying to process what he had just said. What? He exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face. It came in the mail today. I wasn't going to open it, but you did. I finished for him. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. He nodded, looking down at the letter again. And now I don't know what to do. My father, a man I barely remembered. A man who had left so long ago that his face had become a blur in my mind. And now he had written to my stepfather? The room felt like it was tilting, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. What does it say? My stepfather hesitated, his fingers trembling slightly as he unfolded the letter. For a long moment, he just stared at the words. Then, he wants to see you. The air left my lungs. I shook my head, trying to grasp onto something solid. That doesn't make sense. He never tried before. Why now? I don't know. His voice was low, controlled, but I could hear the underlying tension. But he said he regrets everything. That he needs to talk to you before it's too late. My stomach twisted. Too late for what? My stepfather hesitated again. Then, he's dying. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I blinked, my heart hammering against my ribs. He what? Cancer. His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was still trying to process it himself. Doctors gave him a few months, maybe less. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My father, the man who had disappeared without a trace, who had left me behind like I was nothing, was suddenly back. And he was dying. I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Sadness? Nothing? My stepfather watched me carefully, his gaze unreadable. I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but I didn't want to keep it from you either. I let out a shaky breath, rubbing my hands over my arms. What am I supposed to do with this? That's up to you. He sighed, leaning back against the couch. I know how much he hurt you, and I'd never ask you to forgive him. But if you want to see him, I won't stand in your way. A lump formed in my throat. And if I don't, then you don't. His voice was firm, steady. You don't owe him anything. I didn't realize I was shaking until I looked down at my hands. My whole body felt wired, on edge, like my mind was running in 1,000 different directions, and I couldn't catch up. For years, I had told myself he didn't matter. That I was fine without him. That he was just a ghost of the past, a name I barely even spoke. But now he was real again. And soon, he wouldn't be. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. What would you do? My stepfather's lips pressed into a thin line. That's not my decision to make. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to tell him that this wasn't fair, that I didn't ask for this, that I didn't know how to handle it. But instead, I just stood there, staring at the letter in his hands. And deep down, I already knew. No matter what I decided, nothing would ever be the same again.